Hi, I'm Michelle Chalfant, psychotherapist, holistic life coach, and human just like you, learning to navigate life's challenges. With over 25 years experience, I teach people how to get healthy using the adult chair model. The adult chair model is where simple psychology meets grounded spirituality, and it teaches us how to become healthy adults. From anxiety and depression to codependency and relationship issues, you can use the adult chair for just about anything. Each week, I share practical tips, tools, and advice from myself and a wide range of experts on how to get unstuck, how to live authentically, and how to truly love yourself, all while sitting in your adult chair. Welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair Podcast. I am Michelle Chalfant, here with you on podcast 329. Yes, we are in the final Thursday of August, and I have a very special guest on with you today, Claudine Sweeney. We are talking about stories and assumptions. This is a topic near and dear to my heart because I realize that every single human on the planet falls into stories and assumptions probably daily. So we really want to raise our awareness around story and assumption. And what that means is instead of living with fact and truth, which would be living from our adult self, our healthy adult self, we live from a place where we're guessing reality. And when we guess reality or why that person may or may not have called you or why that person didn't invite you to this or that, we go into a story about, oh, that's probably why. So we assume what we think, and then we believe it. And that creates a lot of anxiety. It doesn't feel good. And when we live from this place, we are not living from truth. So what we want to do is always seek fact and truth. And this is what happened with Claudine and I, actually. She's been a dear friend of mine for many, many years. And gosh, our whole relationship almost ended because of a story and assumption. Of course, I have to say, it is funny because when we talked about it, when we finally talked about it after she was very hurt and upset with me, we laughed about it, and we laugh about it on the show today. But she was really, really hurt by what she thought I was doing, and we share all of it with you today. Again, please take what we're talking about today and notice how you can apply it into your own life, because we do this all the time. Our ego just makes a guess. It's like, oop, I think this is why this is happening or why this didn't happen, and we believe it. And what we want to do instead is ask ourselves, what is fact and truth? 100% fact and truth. And you'll be amazed at how often, all humans do this, that we are incorrect with our story and assumption. And this was no different today with Claudine and I and our friendship. So here we go. I just want to tell you a little bit about Claudine. Claudine Sweeney is a certified life coach, author of Empower Your Life, 21 Days to a Happier, Healthier You, and co-host of the Rise Up and Shine podcast. She specializes in helping Christian midlife women redefine their passion and purpose once their nest becomes empty. That is a powerful, powerful, actually, thing that we have to think about right now, because I know so many of us are going through empty nesting, I should say. I know many, many, many of us that are sending our kids off to college, and man, it is hard, really hard. And this is what she specializes in. So make sure to check her out. Also, if you're enjoying the show, and I hope you are, would love, love, love to get a 5-star review from you. So please head on over to Apple Podcasts or Google or wherever you listen and leave a review. I honestly read all of them, and I'm so, so grateful. It's what keeps me going. All right, here we go with Claudine Sweeney and our discussion of stories and assumptions. Hey, Claudine.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Claudine.
So good to be here with you today.
I know. It's so good to be here with you, too. How fun is this?
Very fun. Incredibly fun.
Yeah. So I guess we're two friends today and coaches and people helpers.
Yes. Ex-neighbors.
Ex-neighbors. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's how we met.
Yep. Talking about a very, very, very important subject.
Yes, yes. Today we're talking about stories and assumptions, and it's so relatable for us because in one way, our friendship almost ended a few years ago because of stories and assumptions.
Yes.
And as we were reminiscing about it the other day, we thought this is a powerful topic. We need to share this with others because I wonder how many friendships or relationships are damaged by stories and assumptions.
I'm going to say from 25 years as a therapist and life coach, a ton.
Yes.
And it's not just, stories and assumptions are things that plague every aspect of our lives, whether it be, again, friendships like you and I. I mean, we had a 15-year relationship that almost ended over a story and assumption. But also like in work relationships, families, friendships. I mean, any kind of relationship is affected by stories and assumptions. And we live in stories and assumptions as humans, like every single day.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this was really powerful. So why don't I share a little bit about my stories? It was really mostly me. But so you and I met about 15 years ago. We were neighbors in Nashville. And we built this great friendship, and it's been great. And then I moved. After about 2 years, I moved back to Southern California. But every year I'd come back and visit. So we always had that time together. We stayed connected when I've come back every year to visit. And then one particular year, my husband and I had the opportunity to go to a wedding kind of in the middle of the year.
Yeah, it was not, you normally would come and visit me in Nashville in August every year. Yeah.
Yes.
And you'd spend a few days together and you'd stay with me. And I always expected you to be there in August. So.
Yes. So this was a different month, and I can't remember what it was, but I remember.
It was like March, I think. If I go back, I'm thinking back. Yeah.
Because had it been in the fall, I would have said, well, I'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so it must have been in the middle of the year, and it was kind of spontaneous on our part. So I, of course, wanted to see you. And so I texted you several times telling you that I was coming out on these particular dates and that I would love to see you, that we would love to see you and Graham and spend some time together and connect. And oh, what fun. And so I didn't hear back from you at all. And then I even remember calling, but I left a message just like, hey, Michelle, it's Claudine, just calling to say, hey. I figured that would trigger you like, oh, yeah, she texted me. I should get back to her because I knew you were busy. You were building your business and you were super busy. I think the part what happened to me, too, is you had done either a podcast or a post and you had talked about seasons of friendships, right?
Okay, so wait, hold on a second. You're jumping way too far ahead. Okay. So I want to know what was going through your mind. So you're texting me, because this is what we do as humans.
Right.
Every human does this.
Yeah.
So you're texting me, hey, I'm coming out to the wedding. First time someone doesn't text back, it's like, yeah, they might have missed it, or they're busy, or I know for myself, this is why, for me, I don't even read text right away, because I'll look at them and I'm like, I don't have time to respond to you, so I'll answer it like tomorrow, or I'll answer it later. So sometimes I do that. And I assume, there's my assumption, that other people do it too. So if they don't get back to me immediately, sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Not everyone has their phone glued on them. So what was going through your mind is what I'm curious about.
First time, maybe she didn't get it.
Yeah.
Second time, I know she's super busy. It probably exactly what you just said. That was my assumption as well.
Yeah.
Then I left a voice message, but it didn't refer to anything on the text. I thought it would trigger you.
Okay, so now you're making, like, listen, this is what's so mind-blowing, are all of the assumptions we make. Like, so you then leave me a message, a phone message, and you say, well, you're thinking, excuse me, I'm going to assume that now Michelle's going to check her text because it's going to trigger her memory like, oh yeah, Claudine's been texting me.
Right. Yes. So that I leave a very generic, hey, it's Claudine, which I don't normally call you in the middle of the year either.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, surely she'll call me back, right?
Right.
Even though it was I didn't ask for a call back.
Yeah.
I didn't leave any information. It was very like, hey, it's Claudine.
Because at this point in time, are you starting to feel like, wait, what the heck is she doing? Why isn't she texting me back?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
But then I think like within that week, I see this text or this
It was
podcast
a post. Yeah, it was a post. Yeah.
And it talked about friendships for a season. And all of a sudden I'm like, I must be her. Like now, here's my story. She's seen my text. And she's trying to give me a message. Like I'm really thinking
because
this.
I would post a post on social specific for just you. But yes.
Right, yes.
So no, I
Seriously,
think,
this
you
is
know
my
what it was?
story
I
now.
think it was I think it might have been, as I think back, I might have done the podcast on how to end relationships gracefully or end
Yes.
when relationships end,
Yes.
you know, something like
Something
that.
like
I
that.
did, I remember doing a podcast on that.
So now I'm thinking my story is, oh, she was trying to communicate a message to me, right? Seriously.
Such an assumption, right? But you're trying to figure out, why is she not
Why is she
texting
not
me back?
calling me?
Why is she not calling me back?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So now my story is, well, I guess maybe I'm one of those, but at the same time, I'm like, no, we have too much going.
Yeah, like we're so
Yeah,
close.
that's not
Right,
it.
right.
But this story is kind of in the backlog of my mind. And I think this is what happens to so many people. And we don't discuss it. And I never call and made a specific message like, hey, because I'm, to a certain degree, I'm a conflict avoider. I don't want to, I don't want to get rejected, and I don't want to call and say, hey, are you trying to communicate with me that our friendship
God forbid if you,
Right. So
call and
I don't want
ask.
to hear that.
Yeah.
So then we finally go on the trip, and I tell my husband this, and he's like, well, let's just stop by the house. So we drive by your house, and there's all these cars in the driveway, right? Like, you never have, I live next door to you, literally side by side. Like, I've never seen this many cars in my driveway.
They're all my new friends because
Right?
I got rid of you. So,
That's
you know.
so that's the story, right? Like, oh, look, she has all these new...
So then you fell into that
Seriously.
story. Oh
I
my
did.
gosh.
So then my husband's like, go knock on the door. I'm like, no, look, she's got all these friends over. I can't go knock on the door. So we go do whatever we did. And then the next day we're getting ready to leave. So I said, well, let's drop by one more time. And this time I had paper, and I thought, well, I'll leave her a note. And so I wrote the note, and I said, hey, neighbor, because we used to call each other that.
Yeah.
Still do.
Yeah.
Even though now we're across the country. And I wrote it in a pink highlighter, and I thought, surely
Yeah.
you would know it's me.
Because you love pink. I should know
And then
that.
you never called me. So now I'm like, my husband's like, this is so silly. Like, he's like, why? I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you
Yeah.
just knock? This time I did knock on the door, but no one answered. Apparently he'd been out a while. So I developed all these stories and assumptions. Then I go home, and I must have posted some pictures of
Being in Nashville.
So then now...
I don't even remember. I have to tell you, I remember Graham got the note on the, did you leave it on the door or
Yeah, I
something?
left it on the door.
I think I was out on a walk or
Yeah,
something.
you were on a walk.
And, and he said, here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, what neighbor?
Right.
And I definitely loved my neighbor next door. This is the last house we lived in. Jill lived next door, and I'm thinking, but I'm in town. What did you say? I'm here for a wedding. I don't remember what the note said. But I remember reading the note like, this can't be from Jill because Claudine is... No, I didn't even think about it. I said, this can't be from Jill, my next door neighbor, who I definitely, I mean, we got very close, living next door to her. But it was something that didn't make sense. Like, she's in town for a wedding. I'm like, what? Yeah. And I remember thinking, only Claudine calls me, hey, neighbor. Like, we still call each other, hey, neighbor. Yeah. But it didn't, I couldn't understand, like, but she would have called me if she was in town. Right. Why is she just dropped? That's so random. Right. And I remember thinking, I can't believe she would have reached out to me. Like, what's that all about? She just breezes in and doesn't even tell me. And then, so then you post.
I posted.
Yeah.
And then you're like, are you in town? Like, question mark. And then I think I finally texted you or call. I don't know. I was like, yeah, I tried reaching you. Yeah. So the funny thing is you could have, had you not written on, are you in town? You could have stayed in story and assumption and really had a big attitude. Like, I thought we were so much closer. Yeah. She comes to Nashville. She doesn't even call me. Yeah. She doesn't text me, nothing. Or I had called, but I hadn't told you I was coming. I had just called out of the blue. Yeah. So had you not posted, we would have never been able to have that conversation. And as it turns out, I had been texting your landline.
which we finally figured out. Because then I think we did jump on a call. And we were like, what? Why didn't you let me know? And you're like, I've been texting you. I've been calling you.
And I showed screenshots of my texts, but...
Yes, and that was when you showed me your text, and I said, hello.
That's my landline.
That's my landline. What are you doing?
And for some reason, usually when you text a landline, it kicks it back, or it'll have a little error message, and it wasn't doing that. So here I had all these texts that you weren't responding to, and one generic phone call, and and then you saw my pictures and started thinking, what's wrong with her? But it's so powerful to me because I think we do this all the time. I've had sessions with clients, as I'm sure you have, but where they're like, well, I didn't get invited to the party.
Yes.
And all of a sudden that lack of invitation becomes this whole story. And there's so many assumptions, and it can really destroy relationships. That's why we wanted to talk about this today.
Absolutely. Because I think that... I did call you. I mean, for me, I'm like, this is ridiculous. What is going on? So I called you. We figured it out immediately, and we had a great laugh about it. But you were, dare I might add let me add how you were feeling, I'm sure, at the loss of friendship with me. You were tortured.
I was confused. I'm like, why would she not want to be friends with me after all we've been through? It was very confusing, but had I not heard that podcast or that, whatever it was, a post, I think it was a podcast.
Yeah.
Had I not heard that, that just added to my story.
Which is what we do as humans. So we collect, it's interesting, we collect data to reinforce the story.
Exactly.
Which is so insane.
Right.
And it's interesting. It's kind of like if you want to buy a new car, I want to go get pick any car you want, a white Lexus. I want a white Lexus, I should say. Then everywhere you look is a white Lexus. It's the same kind of thing. We attract in, and we will sort, the eyes and the brain will sort for anything to reinforce what my belief is, not to say that belief is accurate or what my story is. So the story was, so you kept building to the story, which again, this is what people do, and it creates so much suffering and so much anxiety and so much, it's
hurt.
It hurts and pain and so much. So in the adult chair, what we talk about this is one of my favorite things to do. We've got to bust our story. So healthy adults, what we do as healthy adults is we learn to bust those stories.
Right.
And the moment we start falling into story and assumption, and the brain just automatically do that. We go there.
Yes.
And we start building this incorrect story. What we do is we ask, wait a minute, what's fact and truth?
Right.
What's 100% fact and truth?
Right.
What do I know that's 100% fact and truth?
Right.
And so let's go back to our story.
Yes.
If we could go back there and apply that, what's 100% fact and truth, you didn't know if I got the messages or not. So from your perspective, though, you're reaching out and I'm ignoring you, and your assumption or story was, I don't want to be friends with you. And it's like, wait, is that 100% fact and truth?
Right.
And you made that assumption, which is, again, this is what we do. This is what I do.
Right.
Humans do it all the time.
Every day,
Every day. Instead of pulling back, going, well, let me try even another way to reach her, because this doesn't make sense. Michelle wouldn't do this to me.
Right.
We have such a heart-based connection. There's no reason for it.
Well, and a side twist to this, which is so much of the work that you do, especially, and that I do as well, is that our past come into play here. And because I have past friendships with women that have ended just like that.
Me too.
It played into it. I'm like, oh, this is another friend that just is quitting on our friendship without letting me in on it.
Yes.
And so even though those happened when I was a lot younger and I was a teen or early 20s, it plays into that.
Yeah.
And that's the lens that I see friendships out of. So it made sense to me, rationally, that this story would develop, because I'm like, but this is a past pattern.
Absolutely.
So now I see it this way.
The ego says, there's evidence. I have evidence right here. This has happened before. It's absolutely happening again.
And fact and truth was, I had texted you and you hadn't responded. But that wasn't the whole truth, because we can get stuck on our actions and our behaviors. Well, I did this, I said this. But the part that was missing from the story was that you had never received the text.
Yes.
Yes, I had sent them. And yes, it's true you didn't respond. But the missing piece, the important piece, was you had never received the messages.
So funny because this just happened even with my sister recently. We were working. I'd referred her to this body worker because she was having some back pain. I said, "Oh, you gotta call this woman. She's amazing." So my sister reached out to her.
Yeah.
And repeatedly reached out to her. And this woman, Teresa, she did not get back to my sister. So Nicole says to me, like, what is wrong with Teresa? Like, she's not getting back to me. Like, this is ridiculous. What kind of business is she running? And she went on and on and on. And I'm like, protecting Teresa, of course. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I love Teresa. She's like the best. She's amazing. No way. And then I talked to Teresa. So I walk into my next appointment with Teresa, and Teresa's like, what's up with your sister? She doesn't respond to me. And I go, what do you mean? So this is funny. This is like, again, story and assumptions at play again. What happened was there was something wrong with my sister. My sister has an iPhone. Teresa has like a Droid or a Google phone or something. Yeah. It might be the same thing, Droid and Google. Anyway, there was some mix up with my sister's phone where she was texting Teresa and Teresa was seeing her text. But when Teresa would text Nicole, it wasn't going into Nicole's text.
Oh, how strange.
It was like it. Yeah. And then Nicole said, she goes, oh my gosh, the woman that comes and helps me with the house, she's not answering me. That's probably why she has a Droid too. And this person. And I said, I wonder all the people that are trying to reach you that are not reaching you. And they're like upset with you because you aren't responding or so they think, And she was like, oh my gosh. So she had to go to the Apple store and all these texts came through, all these voicemails from people that don't have iPhones. So think about those. Again, we don't know what's going on with other people.
Yeah. And that's why we're talking about this today, because I do think it happens all the time. And had you stayed in an assumption or had an attitude that I came to town, it could have ended our friendship there because I wouldn't have pursued you anymore. Like I would have been like, okay, well, I texted 3 times. I called, I left a note. Like, I'm done. It's on her now. And if you had said, well, how could Claudine come to Nashville and not call me? And thought, well, I'll just wait till next August. I don't think I would have called you just because I would have stayed hurt.
Yes.
Even though I loved you and valued our friendship, I think the hurt and wanting to deal with it would have been too much. So I would have come again to Nashville and not seen you. And thankfully you took that one step of, were you here? Even just responding to the post. I was like, I tried reaching you. But that made such a difference. And I think how often, like even with your sister and Teresa, if you hadn't been the middle person, that would have ended a business relationship.
Oh, my sister was like, what kind of business is she running over there? I'm like, she's got an amazing business. What are you talking about? Yeah. So true. So true. So I just want to share, like, again, how do we work with stories and assumptions? So let's talk about that just for a moment. Number one, we've got to slow down because, the ego gets tripped up and then we go into stories and assumptions. And again, it looks for more evidence of, oh my gosh, well, they're doing this and I saw them do that. And I've got the evidence from the past. And we, cobbled together all this evidence that may or may not be 100% fact and truth. And we've got to be courageous enough. And again, I'm going to just talk about the adult chair because that's what I do. But
absolutely.
The adult chair is, when we're sitting in our adult chair, we're sitting in the healthiest version of self, really, emotionally speaking. Yeah. And what we want to do is, especially when these relationships are important, is to reach out and say, hey, can you help me understand something? It's not... But what happens is we go into a defense. Yes. And can go into attack mode. Right. We can go into blame. Blame is all from the ego. It's like I'm blaming. I'm in, I'm more in more stories and assumptions. I'm going to go tell my mother. I'm going to go tell my friends. Yeah. Can you believe so-and-so did this to me? And then they validate the story instead of validating what's true. So what we want to do is cut through all of that and really go into meeting with that person that you feel like or think has hurt you, forgotten to invite you to the party, not texted you back 10 times. Like, hey, you reach out and you don't reach out via text. Yes. You reached out, call them or meet with them in person and you say, hey, can you help me? Can you help me understand like what's going on? Yeah. why, I didn't get invited to your party.
Right.
You didn't respond to me on text. I'm confused.
Yeah.
And keep digging until you reach them, like you and I had to do, until you figure out really what is not just what you think might be true, but 100% fact and truth. If that person says, I just don't want to be friends with you anymore, there's your answer.
Yeah.
And then you got to sit in that pain and the grief.
Right. Yeah.
But then you've got your answer versus, well, what do you mean? I did invite you to that party. It was an invite. Well, I didn't get it. Well, check your spam and there it is.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
And in the meantime, you're making up stories about why you didn't invite it and how awful that person is.
So true. Yeah. It's so damaging. And I like what you said about staying in fact and truth. And one of the things I've seen with so many women, especially, because that's who I work with, is that they believe their feelings are fact and truth.
Oh, this is good. Yes.
I feel it, therefore it must be true, right?
Yeah.
Or I have this thought about it, so therefore that must be true.
Yes.
And really the work that you do specifically, and also I as well, is helping people see the fact and truth separate from their feelings or their thoughts.
So give an example of that. That's a really good point.
For example, someone says or does something and you feel hurt. So therefore it's true that their behavior was wrong, right? Or bad. Because you feel the pain. So therefore it was something that was true and factual that happened. Even though like with us, with our story, you actually didn't do anything, but I felt hurt. I felt disappointment. So it was true that you rejected me. That's the way people perceive it, right?
Yes.
Because I'm feeling it. And their behavior triggered those feelings. Therefore, that's true and factual.
Right.
Of course, when we dig deeper, we realize, well, you never even received them. So therefore, it wasn't true. You weren't rejecting me, but it felt like rejection. It felt like disappointment. It felt painful.
And honestly, it was. I mean, if it were true.
Yes, if it were true.
It was. But you're absolutely right. People go right into that feeling, and the feeling feels bad.
Yes.
And then, again, I'm going to use the adult chair model, which is like, that's the inner child part of us, that part that is having these feelings. So then the ego comes in and makes up a story about, to try to soften the bad feeling.
Yes.
But the problem is it probably isn't true. Right. I read something, I wish I could remember the source. I say this all the time. It's like 97% of the time that we're in stories and assumptions, they're incorrect.
Yeah.
97% of the time.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's almost all. So I think about, trying to think of an example that I have. I remember someone came in. I was at like some sort of gathering or party or something, and I remember someone gave me a look, one of those looks,
yes, yes.
And I was like, what the hell's their problem? Why would they look at me like that? Like that, she's so mean. Why did she roll her eyes at me? This is this is my thought.
Right.
And of course I was saying next to one of my friends, and I was like, did you see so-and-so? She just rolled her eyes at me. Like, why is she treating me that way? Blah, 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 blah. Well, then you find out later, she didn't roll her eyes at me. Someone was telling her a story, and she was rolling her eyes about the story. But I was across the room, and I was not involved in that story.
Right.
So those kinds of things happen all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And then we have to consider, too, sometimes people, when they act ugly, let's just use that word, or hurtful, let's use that word, whether it be, again, friend, family, business person, I don't care who it is. If someone comes at us and they treat us in an unkind way, we have to consider the circumstance. Like, what the heck is going on? Yeah. Like, if that's not normal behavior for them, then what's going on? So instead of falling into story and assumption, we have to, again, consider, like, broaden the perspective, raise your awareness and say, wait a minute, what else could be true again? Instead of calling your friend for the validation that so-and-so is being mean, wait a minute, so-and-so just lost their best friend or lost their parent or had a fight with their spouse this morning and you didn't even know about it, or let's consider, and then you got to look at evidence from the past, like, wait, we've been really close for a long time, or this is out of character for them. We've got to be able to find fact and truth, even if we're not getting it from that other person, but we need to learn how to reach for that.
Yes.
And consider maybe they're having a bad day.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't slept. Maybe they have a migraine and we just don't know about it. And that's why that they just hung up on me. So I suggest in those cases, give that person a day.
Yeah.
And then reach out on the phone or in person.
Yeah.
And ask them, hey, can you help me? I love that. Because when you come at someone like that, I always have I'm very visual, and I use these in my sessions and when I do workshops. Like I have a sword and shield, like a plastic little kid sword and shield. But if you visualize, if I say to you, hey, can you help me understand something?
Yes.
My sword is down, my shield has been dropped. So I'm coming at you with like an open heart and open arms. Like, what's going on? Are you okay?
Yeah.
I noticed yesterday when we spoke, you hung up on me, or I noticed you were really short with me the other day. Is everything okay? Because we make it so quickly about us.
Right.
Exactly. And so often it's not about us. It's about that other person.
Yeah.
They're human. Yeah. And I don't care how happy the human is. You're going to have a bad day someday.
Right.
You're going to sit in grief sometimes. You're going to be angry sometimes. You're going to be sad some days.
Right.
And it's okay.
And it has nothing to do with me, for example.
Nothing.
Well, I love it. I challenge and encourage my clients to get curious, not critical, which is, it sounds exactly what you're doing.
From the adult, we get curious.
Yes, get curious.
Same.
And I know it's changed my relationship with my husband, my children, my adult children, and friends, because I get curious. Yeah. And it is saying, can you help me understand? Or you said this, what did you mean? Because I heard this. Yeah. And get curious, not critical.
Yes.
It's so helpful. It's so life-changing to get curious. And same thing, like what could be going on? Like if someone says something snipey to me, I just think, I wonder what's going on with them today, instead of making it about me. Like, well, that was really hurtful. Why would they do that?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, we get triggered.
Yes, we do.
And my gosh, I've done enough podcasts on triggering. Like,
yes.
I hope people know how to work with triggers.
Yes.
But we're always working, right?
Yes.
On triggers.
Yes.
But if you're triggered, you've got to sit in it. If it brings you anxiety, you've got to sit.
Right.
And again, from our adult, we choose. We're curious, like you said. We choose our thoughts, though.
Right. Absolutely.
And that's what I think, too. People are not aware that we are able, out of the 70 to 90,000 thoughts a day we have, so many of them are robotic, unconscious thoughts floating through our awareness. And the ones that feel bad, so oftentimes we cling to them. We actually get to choose, do we want to believe that or this?
Yeah.
And we want to make a conscious thought, reach for a conscious thought that feels better instead, and ask, wait a minute.
Yes.
Don't fall victim to your unconscious negative thinking.
Right.
And we do this.
Yep.
We fall victim to our negative, unconscious thoughts and think that's a real thought.
Yep.
And you get to choose your thoughts.
Yeah.
Just knowing that and really becoming masterful with our thinking, that's changed my life in such a big way.
Absolutely. Me too. And when I learned that my thoughts generated my emotions, that how I felt was directly related to my thoughts, it was mind-blowing and absolutely changed my life too. I'm like, I can choose thoughts that make me feel good. And not all the time. Sometimes there are times where it's okay to feel hurt and it's okay to feel disappointment and frustration, and learning how to sit with those emotions without, this is a whole nother episode. We won't tie into it, but it's okay to feel hurt and pain, but so often we want to numb it. But we can choose our thoughts. And with story, today we're talking about story busting, and really choose thoughts that serve us in busting these stories instead of strengthening it, right? Instead of, you call them unconscious negative thoughts. I call them ants. Automatic negative thoughts.
Yes, I love that.
They're automatic.
They're automatic.
They're default.
That's why, we're really mini computers, right? Or big computers, I should say, which are pretty amazing. But we have so much negative thinking every day. Some people have more of it. Some people have less. But it absolutely drives those stories and assumptions. It drives it. And we can turn those things around just with conscious awareness.
Yep.
Slowing ourselves down and choosing the thoughts that feel best, and speaking with the people that you feel have hurt you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Really.
Right.
And getting yourself, people have told me for years when I say, let's bust that story, people will come into my office and say, this and this and this and this is going on. I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And I'll think to myself, this is all a story. There's no evidence. And when I ask them, I want you to tell me, and this is great for people too, if you're listening to this at home, get a piece of paper out.
Yes.
And a pen.
Yep.
And write down, what do I know that's 100% fact and truth in this scenario?
Yes.
And when I have done this with clients over all these years, they'll say, well, they'll come in with this giant story and they might write down either one or two things or zero.
Right.
Most of the time it's like, well, I guess I don't know if any of it's fact and truth. I'm like, well, then let's figure out what we can do to figure out how, from our adult, we gather information that's very empowering.
Yes.
And we have the tough conversations and we go speak to that person, or we figure out what is true to make ourselves feel better. So,
yeah, great advice. Well, I love talking about this with you. I'm so glad that we're sitting here years later.
I
that
know.
we both busted the
We
stories
did bust
and
that
assumptions
story.
and managed to hold on to this wonderful friendship.
Yeah.
But I do think this is a powerful subject. I hope you listeners got something good out of today to bust those stories and assumptions that could be creating pain and suffering or damage to your relationships.
Absolutely. Yeah, this was so fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with me today. This was so fun. Thanks, Claudine.
And thank you, Michelle. Thank you for being with me today. It was
You're
fun.
welcome. As
Tons of
always,
fun. As
so
always.
much fun.
Yes.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that show today. I always love my time with her. We have a lot of fun, but the thing that really can change a relationship is when when we're able to reach our other person, our friend or family member or whoever you're trying to reach, and actually have a vulnerable conversation and ask them what's fact and truth, because that is what busts stories and assumptions. We want to be story busters. That's this term that I just love. I came up with it when we were plotting out, how do you bust a story? I'm like, we just have to live as story busters. So please take that term and apply it into your life. Be the best story buster that you know, and stop living with assumptions, because you know what? It gets us in trouble. All right. Please, I'd love it if you would head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to the show and leave a 5-star review. I love reading your reviews. I thank you so much. I love you all. I'll see you seated right here next week in the adult chair.